watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each one will receive his wage according to his labor. Notice this about the roles that Paul just mentioned. The planter and the waterer, different roles, share the same aim. They have the same goal and they work towards the same end. And it's God who gives the growth. If Paul or Apollos were the one who gave the growth, and one could give more growth than the other, then one ought to be more revered than the other. It's like Paul says, I did my task and Apollos did his, but God gets the glory because we're just there. And he wrought the change. Whether you and I are on a church staff or planning and guiding the body where it will go, or whether we're teaching a class on Sunday morning, we understand gifts and roles. If you were to take your Bible study leader from your senior adult class and a Bible study leader from the children's class and swap them for the day without exchanging material or methodology, you might have a little lack of job security at that point. You're definitely going to get some phone calls. Because the senior citizens are going to find it difficult to jump, shout, stomp, spin, like the grade school kids. And if you discuss with the children loudly how to pass on the wisdom of their age to the generation to come, and how to deal with the deaths of friends that you've grown up with, that you've known for 60 years, you're going to leave with some confused or depressed children. The leaders of the kids and the leaders of the senior adults have different skills and different methods, but they have the same aim, to teach the people. Their roles are suited and specifically guided into what they are called to do. Just because you don't share the same gifts as your friends, just because you and the couple you and your family go out with on Sunday afternoon or on Saturday nights don't have the same skill sets, doesn't mean either of you is less well equipped to the task to which you are called. It only means you are equipped on two different tasks. And maybe Saturday night or Sunday afternoon would be better spent talking about the different vantage points you have on what God is doing. Each year we send some to Africa and some to China and some to Kentucky, God help them. And yet we don't judge between the men and women who go, because they go. And though the roles change, the aim, the glory of God remains the same. Sometimes different roles are just mistaken for different foundations, and we start building poorly. Understand the second part of that sentence. Understand the second part of Paul's argument. Verse 9. For we are God's fellow workers, you are God's field, God's building. Whatever your role, you belong to God. Paul's abandoned the agricultural metaphor and moved on to the construction one almost, but he has a little more to point out. You see, those words that he uses are very specifically chosen. There are other words out there for field, and there are other words out there for building. The ones that Paul picked refer specifically to a field which is being cultivated. The word for building refers to one which is being built, a construction site, if you will. You don't plant the same things in the same field, or rather different things in the same field. A friend of mine one time made us these awesome stuffed jalapenos with cream cheese and wrapped in bacon and then grilled to what I would consider a culinary conversion experience. I mean, it was that beautiful. The problem was, he's a professional chef, and an amateur gardener, and had grown habaneros about 1.5 feet away from the jalapenos. The entire meal was spent enjoying the flavor while crying and making that sucking motion, to get the air across your tongue. We don't build things for different purposes with the same accommodations. A barracks in the military looks a lot different from a daycare, and a restaurant should look different than an airport. Back to that first clause, for we are God's co-workers. That's how most translations have it. Or God's fellow workers. In English and out of context, this can be misleading. A verbatim translation might read, God's are we co-workers, God's field, God's building are you. Co-workers does not mean we work alongside God. In fact, that might be heresy. Take Acts 17:25. Nor is God served by human hands as though he needed anything. Now, the co-workers here are Paul and Apollos, and they are one, as in verse 8, but they belong to God. So too do the field and the building. The syntax or order of words is significant here. The possessor, God, is mentioned first 3 times in a row, despite the fact that it's rather unnatural. Woe to you and I, woe to we, woe to any who forget whose we are. When we forget who it is we belong to, who it is that brings the growth, and who it is that owns the men